me just explain what is happening here. This was recorded on this computer, on this exact computer, running Linux. The only reason why I'm using Linux to record this part here has to do with I could not get Windows to do screen recording because I don't have Camtasia installed on these computers. With all the free tools that I have, yep.
There are a couple of websites that will let you do screen recording for free.
Websites? I
don't know the name of them. I can find them easily, but
when you find them, could you send an email to me and I can put it link, somewhere on my website, so that way I don't forget it and I can share that with other people. Thank you. So anyway, I could not do a screen recording using Windows, so I was going back to Linux. But this is a class that teaches Visual Basic, and I cannot run Visual Basic in Linux. So I have to run Visual Studio on a Windows machine. But here's a Linux box doing the screen recording. I was trying to find a computer that I have access to on campus to run XP. I could not find one that I can actually have control over. So I was running XP inside a virtual machine on my home computer. And this computer was connected to my home computer using VNC. So I'm using VNC to remotely control a XP box that is actually a virtual machine on my home computer.
It's pretty innovative.
It's pretty convoluted. There were certain times, if you watch this, it's kind of funny because there were certain times where I got confused myself. Okay, am I using a browser, that is natively here, or was I using a browser that is on the virtual machine at home? Because when I download a Visual Basic file, it doesn't help me if I'm downloading it here because I don't have Visual Studio on this computer. So that has to be done inside a virtual machine. On the other hand, if I want to display a PDF file, it helps to display here locally because it is faster that way, I can scroll better, and so on and so forth. So there are certain things I want to do locally, there are certain things I want to do remotely. The worst part was Alt-Tab. You guys know that you can use Alt-Tab to switch applications in Windows. You can do the same thing in Linux. So I was used to it, go like, okay, I need to switch from the browser to VB, click, click. Oh, I forgot, this is actually in the Linux environment because I was switching application on the host computer here instead of the computer that I was remotely controlling. So there were certain times that was a little bit confusing, but it worked. Okay, everything worked as it should. So I thought it's pretty interesting how that can be done pretty easily these days. Let me just skip to the part where you can see. Do the mix. First. Basically put a space. See, this is Visual Basic, and then you break the line. That's Visual Basic. And you press enter, right? Inside, an XP box that is a virtual machine. No, you cannot do it in the middle of a word. You can only do it where a comma, a punctuation, or a space is. Yeah, but you cannot do it in the middle of a word. I do not think that. Now, I don't think that's a concern for this class, but one of my classes has a student that has a hearing impairment. She has a translator to help her take notes in the class. So with a screen recording, the main problem is ADA compliance. ADA stands for the Americans Disability Act. Okay, it has to do with making sure resources are equally accessible to people who are completely able and healthy, as well as people who have certain disabilities. Okay. Now, obviously, at a certain point, it is really hard to give people access to certain resources. But whenever possible, we want to make sure that everybody has equal access to our resources. One of the problems that what we ran into with these video clips and whatnot is that not blind people. Okay, blind people can listen to the instructions just fine. It has to do with people who have hearing impairment, because they can see the screen stuff just fine, but they don't know what is happening because they cannot hear what is what the annotation, the explanation of what is going on. The nice thing about YouTube is it has a feature called automated captioning or transcribed audio. Now this is truly amazing. Okay, so I'm going to turn it on. Google calls that experimental. You have to understand Google. Always they're very conservative in terms of how to call or label their products. They will not call something non-beta until they are almost 100% sure it is working perfectly. So they will keep something in beta stage and just under advertise the thing for a long time until it is really ready for prime time. Unlike a certain other software company that we all know of, who would just kind of tout and say, "Look, we got a new product. It has got these features and whatnot." And when you go to the retail store and buy it, no, most of those features are not there or they're broken. Okay, but wait, no, look, we have the second edition now. Everything is now fixed. Now you have to pay extra money to get it installed. I will not name that company. I think most people know, what company we're talking about here. Okay, so you can see the captioning is already here. So if I keep playing it,
okay. Is that okay? Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, it is on. The background stuff we cannot translate because I don't think it can process it.
There's actually a program like in YouTube.
Yeah, you have to move to the right-hand side 2 spaces.
Text.
In that page.
Now some of this is wrong, particularly because I have an accent. So the default translator does not work well with
I
that.
think it will just compress it to 1. Because you have to understand syntax to a point where it will compress empty spaces.
Confess that his spaces. So it is, it doesn't do as well as a person could have done. What they should have done, or I guess, but remember, this is beta. Okay, and Google is really good at perfecting their products before it is rolled out. What they should do is to have speaker preferences. In other words, since I have a Cantonese background, they can just give you a broad selection and say okay, the native speaker has a Cantonese background. Because once they know that I have a Cantonese background, they can actually resolve the confusing points. Because Cantonese speakers, typically will confuse R and L. We do not, we will confuse the short E sound and the short A sounds. There are certain things. Okay, there's a pattern to the accent. Okay. But once the transcriber understands these little things about the accent, the major confusion points, it can probably work much better. Because it can say, okay, we know that when the program hears this sound, it could be this, could be this, could be this, and then from the context, it can probably pick the best choice. Okay, but right now it doesn't have that feature. It just, it would just do the translation. And I have listened to recordings from native speakers, and the transcription is just as bad. So it depends on the volume, depends on the talking style, and many other factors. But it is there. Okay, the feature is there, and it is still experimental. Yep.
When I put my TV on mute, and then you can see the captions being.
Yep.
That is a machine doing that, or is that a person?
It depends on where. It depends on the source. The question is, when you watch DVD or movies from the TV, you can see the closed captioning. The question is, who is responsible for that closed captioning material? Is it automatically generated, or is it manually done? It depends on the source, but it is part of the stream that is coming to your TV.
I was just going to say I agree with that because I've seen things where I'm listening to the audio and seeing the caption, and it's either like a paraphrase of it, or it says the basic point but doesn't go into the specific words of what the person was saying.
That would be done by a person, and that probably applies more to news broadcast, sports program, things that are more real time. If you watch a movie, on the other hand, it's probably done perfectly because they have all the time, all the resources, and all the reasons to have it done properly. But when you watch a newscast, they don't have the resources to do it every single day for half an hour on something that people would not watch again. So that probably is automated.
Yep. Because I noticed a lot of misspellings.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, why That's not spelled right, or there's some letters missing.
Sometimes it's actually people typing it because you can see backspacing.
That's why I asked.
You can see backspaces, like someone would type something and then it's actually incorrect, and you see backspace, and then they'll fix it. So those are basically transcribed on the fly by a real person, and that costs money. That costs a lot of money because live transcribers at that caliber are very expensive. They probably have a few standbys, because if you look at the translators for sign languages and whatnot, they usually have at least 2 of them. Because one person cannot do the transcribing or the translation for more than, say, 15 minutes at a time. So after 15 minutes, they have to let the other person take over so that the first person has a chance to rest. But technology is really getting there. I mean, if you think about 20 years ago, live transcription like this, was considered a high priority topic in artificial intelligence. These days, it's just a matter of perfecting the mechanism. It's no longer something that is truly novel. I mean, okay. Any questions at this point about this stuff? No questions? Okay. Now, when we talked about section 1, I forgot to do a few things. Okay, I keep coming back and say, okay, let's add this stuff to section 1. This one is kind of important because how do you back up a computer? Well, first of all, do we need to back up a computer? Yeah. That relates to stuff that we were talking about earlier at the very beginning of the class. Okay, why do we want to back up a computer? Yep.
In case something happens to the computer and you lose all the data on it.
Well, that's assuming your data is actually important, right?
Right.
Like years and years of photographs, okay, presentations for business, presentation, conference of something, your English paper that is due tomorrow, okay? That stuff is usually considered important. If you lose it, it's not going to be good. Okay, so we need to consider ways to back up computers. Now, when you back up computers, there are typically 2 aspects of backing up a computer. The most important stuff would be your user files, okay? Your documents, your presentation files, your phone books, your tax returns, and so on and so forth. All that stuff cannot be reproduced or be reinstalled, even if you have all the CDs around. So that would be your top priority when you back up a computer. It's just to back up all the user files. Fortunately, in Windows, all that stuff is located in a particular folder. So let me see if I still have that window open. File Manager. Oh, it is still scanning away, so we'll just go ahead and close it. Are you sure? Yes. Okay, still not closing it. We'll force close. Okay, so basically, if you look into a C:\\, you will find a folder called Users. In Windows 7, this has changed its name depending on which version of Windows you're using. But it's usually in one particular folder. All the users data should be stored here. So if you only have a little bit of space to back up something, back up this folder. Okay, that's the most important folder to back up. But just backing up your user data sometimes is nice because you have everything and you can reinstall everything else. But reinstalling all the application programs can take a long time, and sometimes you have to place a few phone calls to complete the installations. Can anyone explain to me why that is the case? Yep.
Like where you have to register the products before you can use them.
You have to reactivate the product.
And your key has already been used. So.
Your key has been used, and your new computer or the replacement computer may not have the same hardware signatures. So when you try to reactivate the product, they will say, oh, but this product has been activated on that specific computer already, and now you're trying to reactivate the same product on another computer. They can tell that you're trying to reactivate on a different computer. Okay? And companies like Adobe, Microsoft, and so on, they do not like that idea. They think that you might be trying to pirate the software. So in that case, you have to call the